quiet last night. Was that a strategy?
I don't think it was really a strategy, Bill. I wanted to do a good job. I won in every poll as far as the debates are concerned. I think you have them in front of you. I don't think you're going to read them because you never do.
Well, it's internet polls. We don't do internet polls here, so don't give me any grief on it. We never do internet polls. Go ahead.
That's all right. That's okay. I think I did well. I was very happy with the result. And, yeah, I thought they were nasty, but I was okay with it. I'm used to it.
But when you say nasty, let's expound upon that, because that's really what's going on today in this country. Do you believe that before the debate started, the CNBC crew sits in a room and says, let's get these guys?
I probably do think that, Bill, but I really don't care. I mean, whatever it is, it is. You go up there, you do your job. They came at me a little bit strong. They came at a couple of others a little bit stronger than they should have. In some cases, much stronger than they should have. But I was fine with it. I actually liked my answers when they came at me. I thought certain of us did very well last night. It was good for us.
Okay. I want to play you a soundbite that I thought was a very interesting part of the debate right now. You were thanking, and we had that they cut away to the wrong governor. Now, it was a nasty question. I don't know what that means, moral authority. I don't know what that means at all. It wasn't clarified. What do you think he was trying to do there?
First of all, I want to thank the governor. That was very nice of him. He could have just sort of avoided that and talked about himself. He chose to defend me, which he didn't have to do. And he's really a quality person, Governor Huckabee. So I wanted to thank him. And I don't know, he didn't have to bring that up. He goes to another person. He talks about moral authority. My moral authority is better than his moral authority, that I can tell you. So I thought it was unnecessary. I thought it was, by the way, we have thousands of people in this room, and it's great. They're big fans. We love them. But I thought it was an unnecessary question, unusual question, the way he phrased it. And yes, they were very, very nasty to a lot of people last night. And I think that they've suffered. I mean, I've been reading such terrible reviews about the commentators last night for CNBC.
All right. Now, when you were up there last night, as you yourself said, you were a little bit more mellow than usual, or than you have been. Is this a new strategy that you're going to be more temperate in your presentations during the debates and perhaps on the trail? Is it a new strategy?
I don't think it's really new. Perhaps I'm going to tone it down a little bit because of the way we've done so well. You know, it's sort of interesting. I wish the country could do this. I've spent less else, and I'm #1 in the polls. So, I mean, that's pretty good. That's what the country should do. But it's been great, and nobody gets the crowds like we get. I mean, look at this room as an example.
Okay, but you're a celebrity. You're a celebrity. And your celebrity status helps you, A, get attention from guys like me, and B, draw crowds in Nevada. But what Kasich was trying to get at, and I'm not sure he was successful, you marginalized him.
He was very unsuccessful.
Yeah, you
Let me
marginalized
tell you, Bill, I'll tell
him.
you. He was very unsuccessful, and every commentator, even the haters and losers that I read all the time, they said that he was put down so strongly that for the rest of the debate, he was just sort of limping along. He hit me at the beginning of the debate. I hit him much harder than he ever thought possible, including the fact that he worked for Lehman Brothers, which took down the world. I mean, this guy was working for Lehman Brothers when it collapsed, and frankly, I think he took a very, very hard hit.
Okay.
And he was not the same. So
Step
that's,
back
whether you like it or not, that's the way it is.
Step back from the personal and look at the argument. The argument that not only he makes, but others make, is that you and Carson are not politicians. You don't know really what the system is in Washington and how you have to horse trade and all of this. And, you know, Americans in the end are going to try to go with the establishment person who might know a little bit more about how things are done there. That's the argument Kasich is making. I did in Ohio. Trump's a businessman. He's not a politician. How do you counter that? How do you counter that argument?
It's so easy. It's so easy. I'll counter it very simply. I built a great company. I've dealt with nothing but politicians over my life. I've been so involved in politics, and frankly, they're all talk, no action. Nobody knows politicians better than me. They're really easy to deal with, that's for sure. So I built this tremendous net worth, this great, great company with some of the greatest real estate assets in the world, of which you know some of them. and this is all over the world. I deal with many different countries. I'm in many different countries, and I've had tremendous success. I have thousands and thousands of employees and tens of thousands of employees over my lifetime. I have more experience than any politician, practically, that's ever run for office. That I can tell you.
I mean, look. And that's good, because then the voter can make up their own mind. You put forth yours with vigor. Kasich and others put forth theirs. Now, the criticism...
Hey, Bill, just one... Let me just finish it. We have been run by politicians. They're grossly incompetent. They're destroying our country. It's time for a real change.
All right, and you're running on that populist point of view. Last question for you. When you answer questions in a general way, which you have a tendency to do, you would say that would be accurate, right? You're more general than specific.
I don't think it's accurate, no. I have a very good tax plan out there. I put in many policy statements, including on Second Amendment, of which I'm very strong in favor of the Second Amendment.
Do you have a gun now, by the way? Are you carrying now?
I have a license. No, not
You're not
right
carrying
now, but
now.
I have a license to carry. I have a license to carry. I'm not carrying now.
Okay.
No, I don't think I answer in a general way. Sometimes maybe,
yeah,
but I don't think I do.
ISIS thing, you answer them in a little general way.
I went to an Ivy League. Hey, Bill. I went to an Ivy League school. I was a very good student. There's no problem with me going into details, believe me. I answer the way I want to answer. And there does have to be, you know, when we answer questions, as an example, about the military and ISIS and everything, if I win, I want to be unpredictable. I don't want ISIS and all of these people that we're going against to know exactly what we're doing. That I can tell you, Bill.
Okay, get back to your rally, and as always, we appreciate you coming on, taking the flag.
Mr. Trump, good to see you again.
Thank you.
It's become almost a cliche in this political cycle that people are fed up with politicians. But back when you announced in June, most of the so-called experts, including me, thought you had no chance and that people would end up voting for somebody with political experience. How did you know that discontent, frustration with the system would be the prevailing mood in 2015?
I felt it. I mean, I felt it from within. We have tremendous discontent in the country. We have tremendous problems in the country. And I felt it early on, or I wouldn't have done this. But I see tremendous discontent.
Before we dig down into some issues, I want to see how much of a disruptor you would be. And let's do a lightning round. Quick questions, quick answers. Would you be willing to use the debt limit and risk the possibility of the country going into default to get more spending cuts?
Okay. I would use the debt limit. I don't want to say. I want to be unpredictable because, you know, we need unpredictability. Everything is so predictable with our country. But I would be very, very strong on the debt limit. And I would be asking for a very big pound of flesh if I were the Republicans. And the problem with the Republicans, they have two sides. The smaller side is very strong, and the other side is always agreeing. And, you know, you can't do that.
Would you be willing to shut down the government in order to defund Planned Parenthood or to push some other key policy goal?
I do not want to say that because I want to show unpredictability. You have to. You can't just go around and say that. But Planned Parenthood should absolutely be defunded. I mean, if you look at what's going on with that, it's terrible. And many other things should be defunded, and many things should be cut.
You said in August that you're, quote, fine with affirmative action. What about conservatives who say the time for that kind of preferential treatment has come and gone?
I'm fine with it. We have it. It's there. But it's coming to a time when maybe we don't need it. That would be a wonderful thing. I don't think we need it so much anymore. You know, it has served its place. It has served its time. Some people have loved it, and some people don't like it at all. But I think there'll be a time when you don't need it.
You are one of the few candidates who has come out with a detailed tax plan. Let's drill down into that. You would cut the 7 tax brackets to 4.
Correct.
0, 10%, 20%, 25%. You'd cut the corporate tax rate from 35% to 15%. You would limit deductions for higher income earners, and you would eliminate carried interest, preferential tax treatment for hedge funders. What's the thinking?
Well, the thinking is we have the highest tax rate in the world. In the entire world, we have the highest tax rate. There's gridlock in Washington because there's no leadership. So what I'm doing is a large tax cut, especially for the middle class, and we're going to have a dynamic country. We're going to have dynamic economics, and it's going to be something really special, and people are going back to work.
But there are two concerns. The Conservative Tax Foundation says that over 10 years you would add $10 trillion to the deficit. And there's also the question of who would benefit under your tax plan. The Tax Foundation says the middle class would see after-tax income increase 7.2%. The top 1% would see a spike of 21.6%. So between that and ending the estate tax, the Trump family and folks like you would make out great.
The estate tax has been a disaster. First of all, it's double taxation. Some people could even say it's triple taxation.
But how about the idea that you're going to blow a hole in the deficit and that the top 1% is going to make out a lot better?
Well, they're going to make out better if the economy gets better. The economy is very sick. We're losing our jobs to China, to Japan, to every country. We're making horrible trade deals. We are losing jobs in this country. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of jobs are being lost. And part of the reason is our taxes are so high in this country. I'm also cutting. You know, they don't talk about that, and I'm doing that in a different little policy segment that we're going to be announcing in 3 weeks.
Spending.
But we're going to be cutting tremendous amounts of money and waste and fraud and abuse. You know, they had a case.
Would you cut departments?
No, I'm not cutting services, but I'm cutting spending. But I may cut Department of Education. I believe Common Core is a very bad thing. I believe that we should be, educating our children from Iowa, from New Hampshire, from South Carolina, from California, from New York. I think that it should be local education. If you look at a Jeb Bush and some of these other, they want them to be educated by Washington, D.C. bureaucrats. So Department of Education is one. Environmental protection, what they do is a disgrace. Every week they come out with new regulations. They're making it impossible.
Who's going to protect the environment?
We'll be fine with the environment. We can leave a little bit, but you can't destroy businesses.
You brought up trade. You would end NAFTA, you would kill the Pacific Trade Agreement, you would impose tariffs on some products like 35% on Ford cars made in Mexico. The Wall Street Journal says that you are running as, quote, the most anti-trade candidate since Herbert Hoover.
Okay, so here's the story. First of all, the Wall Street Journal was bought for $5 billion. It's now worth $500 million, okay? They don't have to tell me what to do. The Wall Street Journal has been wrong so many different times about so many different things. I am all for free trade, but it's got to be fair. When Ford moves their massive plant to Mexico, we get nothing. We lose all of these jobs. What do we get out of it? I don't want them to move their plants.
But I want to pick up on that. Because
no, the point is, I don't want them to move their plants. I want them to stay in Michigan. I want them to stay in all of the places where they are or expand into other places. But I want it to be in the United States. I don't want them to go to Mexico. I don't want them to go to China.
This brings up the point. The Conservative American Enterprise Institute says, look, Donald Trump, he owns 12 hotels, properties all over the world. Your Trump collection clothing line, some of it is made in Mexico and China.
That's true. I want it to be made here.
I know, but the point they say is you're doing just what Ford is. You're taking advantage of a global trading market.
I never dispute that. I put it in my speeches. I say the ties are made in China and different things. I don't want that. I mean, I just ordered 4,000 television sets. You know where they come from? South Korea. And yet we defend South Korea for practically nothing. We have 28,000 soldiers. They're making a fortune. I don't want to order them from South Korea. I don't think anybody makes television sets in the United States anymore. I don't want to order from South Korea. I want to order from here. I talk about it all the time. We don't make anything anymore. Now you look at Boeing. Boeing's going over to China. They're going to build a massive plant because China's demanding it in order to order airplanes from Boeing. So Boeing now is going to China building a massive plant. I don't want that. I don't want that.
You say that eminent domain is wonderful. And you talk
I don't say wonderful. I say eminent domain is something you need, Chris. Eminent domain. If I build a highway... Chris, and I know exactly what you say, but if I build a highway, and if something's in the way of the highway, you're going to have to do something with it.
I understand that, and that's the idea of using, taking private property for a public use.
And by the way, the people get paid for it. Everyone thinks they don't get paid. They get paid a lot of money.
But in the Kelo case, the big Supreme Court case in 2005, they took somebody's home, and they sold it and bought it, and then they sold it to private entrepreneurs, private developers, and that's the question.
That's different.
But that's the question I'm going to ask you.
That's different.
Do you support taking private property for private use.
If somebody has a property in the middle of a 7,000 job factory, as an example, that's going to move into the town, but they need this one corner of his property, and it's going to provide 7,000 jobs in a community that's dying, of which we have many in this country, okay? I am for that. That's a big economic development. But remember this, all of these people that we're talking about, they're friends of mine. They all love the Keystone Pipeline, right? The Keystone Pipeline is all eminent domain. They're building that pipeline. Without eminent domain, you wouldn't be able to build.
But let me ask you, because you were involved in a case like this, as you know, in the 90s.
True. That was an economic development.
In Atlantic City.
Sure.
You had your hotel,
right,
and you wanted to build a parking lot,
right,
and some woman had her house.
She saved me a fortune.
I guess the question is, why do you need to take her house for a parking lot?
I'll tell you why. Because I have a hotel, and in order to expand the hotel and add 2,000 rooms, I would have had to take her thing. Now, the 2,000 rooms would have provided about 2,500 jobs. Ultimately, I offered a lot of money. She didn't take it. I didn't build the job. I didn't do it. Saved me a lot of money because Atlantic City, I had the good sense to leave 7 years ago. I got very lucky. Yeah, I think that would have been a good eminent domain because you would have provided thousands of jobs. And this is a woman that couldn't have cared less about her house. All she wanted was money.
Something you said on Friday has stirred up some controversy about George W. Bush and the Twin Towers. Jeb Bush responded to your comments with a tweet. He said, "How pathetic." Question, do you blame George W. Bush for 9/11?
Look, Jeb said we were safe with my brother. We were safe. Well, the World Trade Center just fell down. Now, am I trying to blame him? I'm not blaming anybody. But the World Trade Center came down. So when he said we were safe, that's not safe. We lost 3,000 people. It was one of the greatest, probably the greatest catastrophe ever in this country, if you think about it, right?
What would you have done?
Well, I would have been much different, I must tell you. Somebody said, well, it wouldn't have been any different. Well, it would have been. I am extremely, extremely tough on illegal immigration. I'm extremely tough on people coming into this country. I believe that if I were running things, I doubt those families would have, I doubt that those people would have been in the country. So there's a good chance that those people would not have been in our country. With that being said, I'm not blaming George Bush, but I don't want Jeb Bush to say, my brother kept us safe, because September 11th was one of the worst days in the history of this country.
There's much more to come of our interview with Doug. Let's look at the polls. According to the latest Real Clear Politics average, you are leading everywhere. You're leading nationally. You're leading in all the early states. Nationally, you're at 23.8%, leading, down 7 points in the last month. In Iowa, 22.3%, down 6 points. New Hampshire, 26.3%, down 6 points. Let me make it clear, because I know this is important to you. You are still leading. Why do you think your numbers have gone down?
I don't think they've gone down. I think they've gone up. We just had a Reuters poll come out. I'm at 33. We just had, as you know, Nevada come out. I'm 20 points ahead of second place. We had one come out in South Carolina where I'm 18 or 20 points ahead. The polls have been now better than they've ever been. And what you're doing is a little bit obsolete information. But that's okay. Look, I'm leading in everything.
Late this week, you forced, I think it's fair to say, you and Ben Carson forced CNBC to change the ground rules for their debate. And Carly Fiorina went after you and Carson. She said, first of all, what are they scared about standing up for 3 hours? And then she said this.
They also apparently asked for prepared statements. You know, prepared statements are what politicians do. So honestly, here are two outsiders, supposedly, Donald Trump and Ben Carson. They sound a lot like politicians tonight to me.
Look, first of all, she's going nowhere. You talk about dropping in the polls. She's dropped like a rock. I could stand there for 12 hours. I could stand there for 20 hours. But the people can't take it. Who wants to watch a debate for 3 hours? I couldn't watch Hillary for an hour and a half. And when I heard it was a 3-hour debate that was only done to make more money for the company, for the network, I said I'm not going to participate because I thought the CNN debate was ridiculous. It was too long, and people were turning off. Who's going to watch a debate that long? You know, it used to be 1 hour when it started. It used to also get no ratings, and both CNN and Fox broke the all-time record on cable television. So I wonder why. Do you have any idea why?
I think maybe it was because of the moderators.
I think so. I do. I think so. Great
which brings me to the question of temperament, which I think you would agree is important.
I think it's very important.
In a president.
Right.
First of all, what's the deal with the tweets? Why are you sitting there at night watching TV and tweeting out?
Well, I think it's fine. It's a great way of getting my word out. I love Twitter and tweeting, and I have between that and Facebook, I have like 10 million followers. It's a great way. You know, now if you do something bad to me, I can tweet about Chris, and the world will be seeing it.
And you have.
No, and you know what? Truthfully, it's an amazing way of getting the word out.
But does Mrs. Trump ever say, Donald, turn off the TV, come to bed?
Oh, I don't do that much, and usually it's not too late. No, I just think it's an amazing way. You know, we're in a modern age now. We have to get with it. It's Twitter and Facebook and all of this stuff is, to me, I mean, it's for some reason, I'm probably not the youngest person using it, but for some reason it works very well. I'm, you know, setting records. In fact, for the debate, you know, I'm talking about the Democrat debate, and they use Democratic. It's really Democrat. You know that, okay? They called it wrong. It's really the Democrat. But the Democrat debate, I picked up more followers by many times than anybody else. And there were those that said I won the debate because I picked up all the followers. But no, I think it's a great modern way of getting the word out.
During the campaign, you have called Marco Rubio a puppet, Jeb Bush low energy, Rand Paul a lightweight, and just this week you called Bernie Sanders a maniac.
And a communist.
And a communist. Do you think that's presidential? Is that the way you would act in the White House?
I'm running against a lot of people, and they come out and attack me very viciously, very viciously. I mean, Perry, I thought he was a nice guy. He was always a friend of mine. He had won campaign contributions. He was always very nice. All of a sudden, boom, I hit him very hard. I hit Rand Paul very hard. Look what happened to him. I'm a counterpuncher. I don't have a choice. If you look at what they say about me, it's terrible. I mean, they say terrible things about me. Bobby Jindal, you talk about lightweights. This guy's a real lightweight. And he hit me. I don't even know this man. And he hit me because, and they're not hitting me on fact, they're hitting me in order to try and pick up something in their polls. The thing I'm most honored about is every single person that went after me, including Jeb Bush, who's down, boom. Every single person that went after me has gone way down. And I'm very honored by that. And that's what the country needs. The country needs a leader that when the country gets hit, we're going to come out on top, not keep going down, because we're going down. Our country is going down.
Then I want to bring up the subject, hear me out, of you and me.
Okay.
During the debate, I asked you a question about bankruptcies.
Right.
And you, I thought, gave a fine answer.
First of all, these lenders aren't babies. These are
The best answer.
Then, for about a week, you go after me. You say, blood's pouring out of my eyes. You compare me unfavorably to my father. And I agree. He's one of a kind. Here's the question. You're running for president. I mean, we talked to Chris Christie about Bridgegate. We talked to Carly Fiorina about
destroying a company. She destroyed her company.
Okay, I guess the question is...
No, it's not personal.
Are you a little thin-skinned?
No, I'm only thin-skinned when somebody says bad things that are false. For instance, if you hit me about something that's true, all right, the bankruptcy, I use that as a tool. I didn't ever file for bankruptcy. Out of hundreds and hundreds of deals, I've done it 4 times. I've used it 4 times.
But it was just a question.
No, I know, but the way it was phrased. The way it was phrased. I could see the eyes, okay?
I don't even know what blood's coming out of my eyes.
I've used it as a tool brilliantly. And it was phrased incorrectly, in my opinion, the question. And you wouldn't have asked these people about bankruptcy, but you asked me about it. And I've used it brilliantly.
I asked Carly Fiorina about Hewlett Packard.
Well, that's easy. She destroyed the company, okay? That one's an easy one. So I'm not thin-skinned when something's truthful. If I did something wrong, and you said I did something, I can handle that, and if the press is bad, it's when people hit me when I didn't do anything wrong. You know, it's like, then it's not a question of thin skin. I will fight back.
You say, my father covered you in a much fairer manner. So I decided to go back and look at your first profile on 60 Minutes. He talked a lot about your successes, but he also talked about the fact you were in a controversy then. The allegation was that you were trying to throw middle-class people out of a rent-controlled building so you could create condos for rich people. Here's a clip.
And they call you arrogant.
First of all,
well, I've been doing this for a long time.
First of all, whatever happened to that nice, soft-spoken young man?
I know.
Was that a fair question for him to ask you?
I thought it was a fair, because it was very controversial at the time, and I thought it was fair.
Not to press my luck, but true or false, you at one point considered and tried to put homeless people in some of those apartments to force the tenants to move out.
No, I talked about doing it, and I talked about doing it as a charity. That's right. We have a thing called...
charity?
I was thinking about doing that, and, I would have done that, and it would have been nice, and it would have been charitable. But you have wealthy people living and paying like $200 rent on Fifth Avenue or Central Park South. I think it's unfair, and it's been proven to be unfair.
Finally, Hillary Clinton testifies before the House Benghazi Committee this week. What is it you would like to find out about both her role in Benghazi and about her emails?
I think things will be revealed. Personally, I think that Hillary was one of the worst, if not the worst. I mean, if you look at the record, Secretary of States ever in this country. I think that's the bigger problem that she's got. I don't think Benghazi's as big a problem for her as her past and what's happened. The world blew up around her. You look at the world, it just blew up around her. Everything went bad, whether it's Libya, whether it's her tenure in Iraq, and there's been plenty of bad tenures having to do with Iraq because of the length. Things that happened during her tenure were a disaster. I think she's probably going to go down as the worst Secretary of State in the history of this country, and I think that will be what I will tell you. That will be what I will be campaigning on. Now, what's going to happen with Benghazi will be very interesting. I look forward to it.
If you end up as the Republican nominee and she's the Democratic nominee, how would you take her on?
I'd take her on tough. I'd just take her on her record. I'd discuss her record. I think her record is abysmal, and I would take her on her record.
Yes.
One of the Republican candidates that everybody's talking about right now. He's neck and neck with Donald Trump, and we have a lot to talk about today. So please, let's welcome author of the new book, A More Perfect Union, presidential candidate, Dr. Ben Carson. You have such a calm, measured way of speaking. It's really quite different from everybody else who's so bombastic. I just have to ask before we do anything else. Do you ever yell?
No.
No?
I used to.
Yep.
I used to be very hot-tempered, got into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, we read the book. You wrote about it. And you read the Bible and came out a changed man from the bathroom. That was a very interesting story.
Well, I came to the understanding that to lash out at people, to try to punch somebody in the face was not a sign of strength. It was a sign of weakness.
Even when they get your Starbucks order wrong? Because, sometimes I get very curious.
Well, let's get into it, because, you've been making a couple of controversial comments over the last couple of days. The Hitler Nazi Germany could happen here.
That's not what I said.
Okay, well, I'm just giving you...
That's the spin.
Okay,
that's
so,
the spin.
Well, then I want to give you an opportunity to say what you said and explain what you meant. But I want to give you the other two.
Okay.
Would not support a Muslim president if his religion is inconsistent with the Constitution.
Okay.
And then it's okay to have a Confederate flag on private property.
Okay.
That one's right.
I don't have any problems. I can explain all of those quite easily.
So I'm asking.
That's the reason that I wrote that book, by the way.
Right.
It's about our laws and what is correct in this country. And this is a pluralistic society.
Right.
So that means no my way or the highway stuff. It means we have to learn how to get along together. And there's give and take with that. Now, what I was saying about the Hitler comment,
right.
And I purposely said that because I knew the left wing would go crazy. He said Hitler! That's
I don't think that's what happened.
Yes,
but why not just explain what you said so we understand?
So what I said is most of the people in Nazi Germany did not believe in what Hitler was doing. But did they speak up? No. They kept their mouths shut. And when you do that, you are compromising your freedom and the freedom of people who come behind you. You have to be willing to stand up for what you believe in.
He won the election in Germany. He won the election.
It doesn't matter what he did. We know he was an evil man.
But also, there were people standing up, just so the White Rose Society. There were a lot of folks that were...
enough.
They might not have been enough, but there were people.
But that was the point.
That was your point.
I want people in America to be willing to stand up for what they believe in.
Okay, let me ask. No, we do. On this show especially.
Yeah.
But, you're a neurosurgeon, which, I'm very impressed with that. You separated Siamese twins, right? Fabulous. But I know also you're a scientist, and yet I was reading that you don't believe in evolution. Okay, now wait, before you go any further, what I want to say to you is, don't take this wrong, Mrs. Carson, I'm not asking for a date. But how do you feel about taking a trip to the Museum of Natural History with me? We could do like a little walkthrough and have a discussion about it.
Believe me, I would be happy to do that. I can have a very in-depth discussion with you. I've had discussions with Nobel laureates on this, and they have to admit that, well, we don't know everything. You know, the fact of the matter...
What do you make of that fact that they just dug up some bones 100 million years ago?
Let me explain. First of all, evolution, microevolution versus macroevolution are two different things.
Oh, this is too in the weeds for us right now. We don't have the time for this conversation. Let's just go on the date.
We're talking about natural selection when we're talking about microevolution. And I believe, yes, organisms have an ability to adapt to their environment, and they have the ability to change.
Right.
Now, the evolutionists say that is proof positive of evolution. I say it's proof positive of an intelligent creature who gave his creatures the ability to adapt to their environment so that they don't have to start over every 50 years.
But that's your faith. You believe that because that's your faith, right?
And I have said...
Why not believe in both?
Do you believe in both? Can you believe in both?
And I have said, you know, people are allowed to believe in what they believe. Some people believe that something came from nothing, and then they believe that it exploded, and we had a perfectly organized org. I don't believe that. I don't have enough faith to believe that, but I don't denigrate people who believe that.
No.
Okay, so people need to respect where you're coming from. I want to ask you, right after that tragic shooting in Oregon last week, you said gun control is not the answer. And I know you're a big advocate for mental health, but this morning you said that you'd be very comfortable if kindergarten teachers had guns in the classroom. Why do you think that's a good idea?
Not all kindergarten teachers. I said people who are trained and understand all the implications. And you obviously are not just going to have a weapon sitting on the kindergarten teacher's desk. And I know
Where would the weapon be?
It would be secured in a place where kids could not get to it.
So if a gunman comes in, if a gunman comes in with an AK-45 or an AR-15, how fast can that teacher go to the locked drawer and get that gun?
Well, I want that teacher trained.
You want that teacher trained?
I want that teacher trained in diversionary tactics and whatever needs to be done in order to get there. And I want there to be other people in that school who also know how to get to that.
Why do we want to live like this? I was a school teacher. I don't want to live like that.
You got... Go ahead.
We don't want to live that way.
No.
Michelle, do you want to go?
I do have a quick question, because, you know, you were asked recently about what you would do with Hurricane Joaquin, and, you know, you said you didn't know, and actually the look on your press secretary's face was... Hilarious and priceless, and we love her. But do you have an... And we have it right here. That's, like, my favorite reaction, maybe of all time. But do you have an answer now?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because I hope you saw the press conference. We were talking about something completely different. We were on the way out to the bus, and someone brings up a new subject. I said, I don't know. I'm getting out of here.
But to prepare for a hurricane, I mean, I grew up in Miami, so I'm like, you know, even we have some things in place when a hurricane comes.
Clearly, we have a whole series of things in places for hurricanes. And quite frankly, if you're at the point where the president has to enact the things, you have not done your homework. That should be already in place and ready to go.
Mr. Carson, I have a question for you, and I want to also talk about your book, but my first quick thing is, the one thing I do like about you is your tax idea. Everyone should pay the same tax, flat tax, and get rid of the IRA. High five. Cool beans for you. But I want to hear about your book, the IRS. What did I say?
She said IRA. I was wondering about that.
Sorry.
I knew what you meant.
I know. Well, we all mess up sometimes, right? So please talk about your book, The New Perfect Union, for us, please.
Well, everybody knows that we have a Constitution, but not many people know what's in it. And it's very important because the founders of this nation said that our freedoms and our system is based upon a well-informed and educated populace. And if you don't have that, then it becomes very easy to fool people. For instance, let me give you a perfect example. If you're not well educated, someone could come along and say, you know what, the economy is great. Unemployment is down to 5.1%, which is essentially full employment. We're in great shape. But if you're well educated and informed, you know that you can make that number anything you want based on who you include and exclude, and that the labor force participation rate, which is the number of people eligible to work who are actually working, is at a 37-year low. And we know we have problems and we need to fix them. And these are not Democrat or Republican problems. These are problems that affect our whole society. And we have to stop making everything into a Democrat or Republican.
I agree with that.
Ben, I know your wife's in the audience right now. You've been married to your beautiful wife, Candy, for 40 years. She said she did not want you to run for president until she became a grandmother. You are now a grandmother of 2. Why did you not want him to run for president until you became a grandma?
You know, we've been married 40 years. Yay! And we celebrated in New Hampshire, 600 of our closest friends. But getting back to the 2 granddaughters, one of them was born on Leap Day in 2012, so, you know, she didn't even have a birthday this year, but she had her party. The other one's going to turn 2 next month. And when you look in those little faces and you think about the debt that our country has, we're at $18.5 trillion, which to pay it off, if you were to pay it off at a rate of $10 million every day, 365 days a year, 365 days a year, it would take you 5,000 years. That's how bad it is. We're the first generation to make it worse for the next generation. When I look at these little faces, I say, we can't do that to them. When I see other people's babies, because I don't see my own, because we're not home, but when I see these other little, you know, it just makes me more determined that whatever I can do, I'm going to do.
Are you going to put him in your cabinet, Dr. Carson?
Okay, well, we're going to talk more when we come right back. Hey, so we're back with Dr. Ben Carson. He's really one of the leaders in the polls. And one of the other quotes that we've sort of gotten from the research is that you sort of feel that there's not actually a war on women, but there may be a war on what's inside of women. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the babies. I mean, killing babies all over the place. And, you know, we should be, I think people can probably understand. In my case, I spent my entire career trying to preserve life and give people quality of life, even operating on babies in the womb, operating all night long sometimes on premature babies. And I get to meet those people, you know, when they're adults and productive adults. There is no way you can convince me that they're not important, that they're just a mass of cells and that you can do anything to them.
I want to ask you this. Have you met with the women who have to make these horrendous decisions when they have to make them of whether or not they can bring a child into the world? I mean, we talk about bringing children into the world all the time, but periodically, some women feel, I just can't. And are you empathetic to them? Because we just had
empathetic.
Oh, good. Go ahead, sorry. Go
very empathetic, and what I have said is that this is a job for us in the private sector. What we need to do is make sure that we provide adequate daycare centers for these mothers so that they can get their GED, their associate's degree, their bachelor's degree, their master's degree.
You're assuming that these are mothers who aren't educated. I mean, I'm talking about women who make that.
Most of them.
I don't know that you can.
Let me tell you a fact. Let me tell you a fact. The fact is, a lot of those young girls who are having babies out of wedlock, when they have that first baby, they stop their education. And that child is 4 times as likely to grow up in poverty. We as a society have an obligation to do what's necessary to stop that cycle from occurring.
So how important is birth control then to the Republican Party? They should be out there regularly applauding Planned Parenthood for supplying birth control, mammograms, and everything else. Why are they against Planned Parenthood? Are you against birth control, too?
I don't speak for the Republican Party. I speak for me.
Okay, for yourself. Are you against birth control also?
No, I'm not.
Okay. All right. And so I guess you believe in daycare centers and maternity leave and food stamps and all the things that go along with raising a kid if you don't have the money.
Here's what I believe in, because I get sick and tired of people, particularly progressives, saying Carson grew up poor, he must have benefited from government programs, and now he wants to withdraw all the programs from poor people.
We do not assume
Wait a minute. I've heard that so many times. You've heard it too. It's a bunch of crap. And what I really actually want to do is provide people with a mechanism for coming out of a state of dependency and climbing the ladder and becoming part of the fabric of America.
This is a great thing.
We agree with that.
Yes, but I think my question. Actually, I'm going to let everybody else ask their questions.
It takes me to Obamacare, because you said it's the worst thing that has happened in this nation since slavery. How is it slavery and over 9 million people have it?
Let me tell you why.
Why?
Because This is supposed to be a country that is of, for, and by the people. The government is supposed to be there to facilitate life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. With this particular act, the government comes along and says, don't care what you people think. This is what we're doing. We're cramming it down your throat, and if you don't like it, too bad.
Getting into the war.
That essentially shifts...
Because we've done that. That seems to be the way of the nation.
But it shifts the relationship between the people and the government. The people are supposed to be at the pinnacle. The government works for us. It's not the other way around. And we need to restore that.
Okay.
That's very important.
All right. Are we done?
Anybody else?
I just wanted to ask one last thing. I mean, you said that you don't necessarily relate to the Republicans, and you don't really say you're a Democrat either. So why do you feel this way?
I said I don't speak for the Republicans. I didn't say I didn't relate to them.
Yeah.
It's a very different thing.
Is there anything about the Republicans that you don't relate to?
Well, I am not a highly partisan person. The issues that affect us, imminent financial collapse if we don't change our ways.
Forgive me, Dr. Ben.
Forgive me. They're not Republican or Democrat issues.
Dr. Ben Carson, y'all. Members, wait. Members of the audience, you're all going home with Dr. Ben's book, A More Perfect Union. Thank you, Dr. Ben.